Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dev Section group conversation. My name is Eric Brinkman. I'm the Director of Product for the Dev Section, and today is March 31st, 2020. Thanks for coming to our group conversation today. Sid, looks like you've got the first question.
Yeah, thanks. Someone asked on Twitter why merge request reviews are a paid feature. They make the point that they're mostly used by individual contributors. And I first confused it with merge request approvals, which I think that's definitely something your manager wants, more sign off. But a review could be something you're sending to a peer more than your manager who does the code review. You don't want to spam them. Could be sending to your manager as well if your manager's a developer. It's kind of on the cusp there. I wonder what the thinking is there.
Yeah, I think this is a good candidate for looking at being an IC. I think in general we've defaulted to anything that is a review or anything that would be an approval would be in a higher tier. But I think you're right, and I think that this tweet, which I saw last night, is also brings up a good point, which is you can review your own work too. It doesn't just have to be sent to a peer or a manager like what you were saying, but you can also review your own work, and this is pretty common when you're drafting code. It's common when you're drafting prose or any other sort of written essays, literature, anything we've done in school. You write the first draft, you come back and you look at it with fresh eyes, and you see a whole bunch of different things that you didn't catch the first time. So I think this is a great one to consider moving down. And James Ramsey and I spoke yesterday about this, moving this down, and I think that we will consider it.
Yeah, I want to make clear, like it's not like what is a theoretical use case, reviewing your own code. Yeah, that happens, but like what's the most common one? Is it your manager reviewing your code, or is it another IC? And I have a hard time doing that. Anyway, let me know how I can get back to this person. If maybe we create an issue to discuss, or maybe we just say, hey, we'll respond to this on this date.
Yeah, I'll consider getting back to you later today, or even just responding to that tweet later.
Cool, that's great. Yeah, maybe if you respond directly, I'm out of the loop. That'd be great. And we don't have to promise anything. Just say, hey, we're going to think about this, and by this and this date, feel free to ping me for an update.
All right, we'll plan on that. I'll just respond directly, then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Cool. Hey, so we released a GitLab hosted code sandbox. That's awesome. I asked for a demo, but there's a YouTube video, so I can self-serve for that. And I wondered, like, does it now work in all cases? I think we had an instance where it only worked for public projects on .com. Does it now work on both .com and self-managed for public and private projects by default without turning anything on?
I'll take that one, Eric. Yeah. So yeah, the video shows it for hosting, which basically the change was if you watch your network traffic in the dev console, it would show the calls to code sandbox. It now shows them coming off of our CDN. Does it work for everything? So even when the feature was hosted by Code Sandbox, the feature was toggled on for GitLab.com, and it worked for public or private projects on GitLab.com. The difference being that if it was a public project, we showed a Code Sandbox badge down in the bottom right, and if it was a private project, we didn't show the Code Sandbox badge, and we didn't. You couldn't open the project in Code Sandbox because it was a private project. For self-managed, that would have been the case whether GitLab.com was hosting it or not. They could have turned it on, and they could have talked to Code Sandbox if they wanted to send their self-managed assets off. The difference now is that we've made a higher level of trust for our self-managed customers, that if they didn't trust Code Sandbox hosted versions for whatever reason, because they don't know who Code Sandbox is, they can trust that the version of the package that we're hosting is at least something that GitLab is comfortable hosting and providing those customers. The next steps there, we're going to enable a field to give a way to configure where those assets are hosted so that self-managed instances can host it themselves. We are not going to toggle it on by default because we don't have a way to automate the install of this. Similar for reasons that like pages can't be automated out of the box. This requires hosting on a separate domain from your GitLab instance for security reasons. And so we can't do that as part of Omnibus. It's not something that we think a lot of people need us to do, but we think if we can provide the instructions how to do that, that'll be the right step. The video that I linked also shows that I hosted the assets on Pages and then linked the Pages domain on GitLab.com and then linked my GDK to that to serve as Code Sandbox assets. So there's a path forward there for people that I think like don't want to go find some static site hosting somewhere, but I don't think it's anything we'll automate other than here's maybe a CI script that you could use, and here's a way to configure that in the admin interface.
So it works, it's on by default for public and private projects on .com, but for
Yes.
self-managed, you need to install the CD, and you need to install the JavaScript because we need it to be on a different domain to prevent an XSS attack.
For self-managed, if you toggle it on today, you can go in the admin interface and toggle it on. It'll talk to the assets hosted from GitLab.com. So you can do that in self-managed. If you don't want to have that external
communication. Why don't we turn that on by default?
There's a concern for similar reasons of like security, or for like some self-managed instances with our security scanners that have to talk to GitLab.com for those rules, that self-managed instances don't necessarily want external callouts that they're not controlling to other services. Yeah. So out of the box, GitLab.com doesn't make any external calls. This would be one of those things that now GitLab.com is talking, or GitLab self-managed is now talking to .com.
Yeah,
it's a little messy.
It's a little messy, and we don't want to host it on the same URL as Pages. Like Pages is now, it's common to install. Can we do it that if you install Pages, you get these assets with it, or is that conflating two things that probably shouldn't be conflated?
If you installed Pages, you could fork, or we could make a template that could host these assets for you. If you wanted, we could do something to make it easy, but we wouldn't necessarily default that on. Or we could potentially install that automatically if you install Pages, maybe with enough notice, but I think, I don't know, I haven't thought about that.
Yeah, and it's an instance-wide setting. Yeah, I can see some customers being concerned if individual users can turn this on. But the problem is, like, do the admins see whether they've turned it on? Do you like get a red thingy or admin overview if you haven't turned it on to show you instructions and stuff?
If you haven't turned it on, no. I think it's a checkbox under the integration setting. So it's just like other integrations that we have inside the admin interface. You'd have to go and find it and then.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Cool. Thanks for the detail. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Cool. I think I had the next question. It's super exciting to see the Jira importer on track for 12.10. I think that's a heck of an achievement in such a short period of time. I was really curious if we had any expected outcomes for that MVC. I know sometimes it's a challenge to get data. Keenan and Justin, love to kind of hear your thoughts on kind of expected outcomes for that MVC.
Yeah, so I'll take a little bit, and I know Gabe's on here. He has a lot of information as well. The main success metric is to get started, right? So to get the MVC out there so we can actually start getting usage on it and then open up conversations with users to see what needs to move forward with additional iterations. The success metrics we're specifically working to track within, actually through usage tracking is number of times the importers used and the count of the number of issues that get imported. Those are the first two metrics we're going to track just to gauge first usage. And I also linked the MVC epic if you're curious about everything that's gone on in that conversation, which is pretty deep, and what the MVC is actually going to do.
Yeah, I think Keenan covered it well. We're also just excited to learn from customers who might try it early on, because we know that it's not going to be the perfect solution for every customer, but it's a great opportunity to iterate and grow with customers as they adopt plan over time.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more thing to that. I think it's important to note that like right now there's some gaps between us and some of our main competitors, specifically Jira. And so by building an importer first and then maintaining that importer as we add new capabilities to product, we'll be able to better measure that inflection point of when we're starting to make a dent in capturing market share from Jira. And hopefully in the future, we'll also have some importers from other large competitors. But like I think there are people who are asking for it now with our current capabilities in GitLab, which is great. So we're going to service them. And then over time, we'll also be able to understand if we're making progress towards our strategic goals. So I hope that helps, but happy to dig in more if you want to talk more.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, we should have a demo of that in the next couple of days, right?
Correct. It's on Canary right now. So behind a feature flag.
All right, I got the next question. It's about the ELSIF integration. We shipped recently and ELSIF is the language server index format for the ones who don't know yet, which is a way to index your code, and then we could do intelligent things about. Well, let me give an example. Jump to definition, for example, especially in languages as Go. I wondered what the vision is and where we're going with this and what the next iterations were.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, similar to what Sid was talking about with default on is with self-managed and .com for private and public projects. One of the challenges we had with kind of doing an integration here was that, you know, you could have the previous solution that we had for code intelligence, which was in integration with SourceGraph, works great for public projects on GitLab.com, but for self-managed customers, they had to jump through a lot of hoops. And so one of the reasons that we wanted to integrate ELSIF directly was so that this would work on private and public projects for both self-managed and .com, regardless of you know, your deployment target. And so that was kind of the rationale for striking out and beginning to iterate on this in the first place. Obviously, find references and jump to definition functionality is important, and that's what we're continuing to iterate on. I would say that if you look at slide 37, the third bullet under source code, there's an issue linked there, which is to basically simplify the code intel setup. Right now, it's kind of difficult to use and to enable. And so we're going to simplify that and launch that in 13.0. And so that's probably the next iteration. With respect to code search, there's also work going on the Elasticsearch side as well, for like doing code search across GitLab.com overall as well, to find code more easily across a whole bunch of different projects. So I would say those are probably the next two things that we're focused on.
Thanks.
And IP, I don't know if I think I might have answered your question, but let me know if I didn't.
Yeah, so part of my interest is if you were to change code across multiple repositories, this could be one way of making sure that you capture all of them. If those kind of features or are in the pipeline, it's in the vision, or if that's, let's say, 2025 iterations of.
I would say it's not that many iterations off, but it's definitely not, you know, the next 2 or 3 iterations.
Yeah, I'll just add, ZJ, I think for what your specific use case is, as far as I understand the ELSIF work that we're doing, it'll be contained to the project that you're in, which is fairly standard with most of like the code navigation tools, that they're contained to the project that you're in, because it's fairly complicated for them to understand references to like packages that you might be using or other projects. The flip to that is the code search that is enabled by advanced global search on GitLab.com, which does exist for all the GitLab projects, the GitLab org. That can search across projects. So if you provided, you know, a function name to our search there, you would be able to see kind of all the results of that function name back. It doesn't have the intelligence baked in yet. I think the future iterations of the ELSIF stuff will be that we'd be able to integrate that intelligence into those results. We're also looking at it in the web IDE and other places within GitLab where we can kind of leverage that same ELSIF information for those results.
Thanks, Kai.
Yeah, I think also just because, you know, Kai, you were talking, one of the things we've been talking about is figuring out how to integrate a lot of this functionality better into the Web IDE so that people have just a really cool experience in the Web IDE. So that's something we're also considering too, and kind of merging code review and code intelligence and making it a really cool first-class experience inside of the Web IDE as well. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, I will give a small plug then. The deck is rather large, so as you thumb through it, if you have any other questions, please feel free to drop them either directly to me or in the product channel, or better yet, in the stage group channel in Slack. That's the most relevance. We would love to connect and engage with each of you. And thanks so much for coming.
Nice work, dev section.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.